2.5 million Queenslanders were affected by the state's devastating floods earlier this year, and today the Flood Commission released its interim report into the disaster. It's made 175 recommendations on how to better handle a similar event in future. 35 people died in December and January when almost 80% of Queensland was inundated, and the damage bill has topped $5 billion. Many survivors are still coming to terms with their experience and still have some way to go in rebuilding their lives. Karen Berkman reports from Brisbane.
The 220-page interim report was compiled with lightning speed in time for the next wet season. The Commission heard evidence for 7 weeks over 6 months and took 660 submissions. Most of its recommendations were aimed at the state government.
I intend to implement them without exception. This is a blueprint for us to manage future disasters better. We owe it to those people who suffered in this disaster to learn the lessons and to act on them, and that's what we'll do.
30 recommendations were aimed at Wivenhoe Dam, where late releases contributed much of Brisbane's flooding. Brisbane's Lord Mayor at the time is now the head of the state opposition.
Had I been the Premier at the time, we would have acted. We would have drawn the dam down.
The Commission found that engineers at Wivenhoe Dam failed to take into account rainfall forecasts as the dam rose towards maximum capacity, technically breaching the Wivenhoe manual and potentially leaving the state government open to legal action.
It's a question that will have to be tested, and I would expect that there will be some people seeking to test it.
Wivenhoe was built after the 1974 floods to mitigate future disasters. Some people trusted it too much. The report described it as Queensland's most dangerous and most important piece of public infrastructure. In October last year, the Weather Bureau was already warning that big rain was coming and the dam was close to full.
Why then, armed with the information they had, why didn't they do something about the management of Wivenhoe Dam? And the Commissioner has indicated that there are questions about how that all unfolded, and particularly of concern, there's no record of any sort of decision-making process by the Minister, and clearly that needs to be addressed.
He sought both verbal and written advice, and all of that advice confirmed at the time that there would be very small or negligible impacts of any reduction and that he should not make such a reduction.
The Commission also recommended improved standardised training for O call takers. Some of the saddest evidence it heard was about the castigation of a woman trapped in her car on a flooded road with 2 children. Donna Rice and her son Jordan had been swept away by the time help arrived.
Certainly we are taking action, as the Commission of Inquiry has recommended, to train all of our call takers, perhaps more appropriately.
The inquiry was told that the call centre was overwhelmed when a savage flash flood tore through Toowoomba. The phone was being manned by an officer not trained for the duty.
Sometimes we don't get it quite right. And yes, a single incident can impact on the reputation of our organisation, and we understand that. And that's why we have processes in place to deal with that.
The people of Grantham were angered by the report, saying it gave no answers, only excuses. The Commission recommended better warning systems, possibly sirens in small towns like Grantham in the Lockyer Valley, where 11 people died on the 10th of January.
I don't think a lot of people would have lost their lives if we had had time to get out.
The Commission also found that centralised coordination could have sent them more rescue helicopters on the day of the disaster, but said given the weather, the outcome might not have been much better. The Mayor thinks the most important recommendation for his town is to clear the Lockyer Creek of tons of debris.
If we were to have any form of a flood, that material will come down, could deposit up against infrastructure, houses, anything like that, and cause enormous damage. And it's a task that's really beyond an individual council to remove.
The damage bill in Queensland is already around $5 billion. Implementing the recommendations will also be expensive.
But across a budget the size of the state government, and some of this will be over a number of years, this is a very important investment in our safety. The cost of not implementing these initiatives, I think, would be far greater in the long term, both in financial and human terms.
The Commission will deliver its final report next February. Karen Berkman, Lateline.